Let's start with the Europa League and Manchester United. Jules, let's think of this as sort of a temperature check on where they are. They're playing at home against Twente and my boy Sam Lammers, former Atalanta
I love Sam.
Meteor. There were good things and there were bad things, I thought, from Manchester United.
Really? What was the good thing?
They took the lead.
Okay, yeah.
I thought they actually created Marcus Rashford did this filthy bit of magic.
Okay.
Right? And
that's a good thing. You consider that the flip-flop nutmeg, you mean? The elastical nutmeg.
You did not enjoy that.
Yeah, but we can't count that as a positive from Manchester United's performance.
Okay, it's positive that he plays, which means he's not back on the naughty step.
Yeah, he looked good.
Some people suggested.
But what else?
And then not much else. And as Eric Ten Hag said,
So the positive is just they took the lead.
They took the level. I think if you break down the chances, maybe they didn't have more chances or better chances. I don't know what the XG were, but they did create chances. I'm trying.
Just the one at the end on that corner. That's it. What other chance?
Okay. All right. I'm in the positivity
No,
corner. Eric, I'm trying to find some positives.
Because I don't find much positives. That's all. I was very disappointed. Very, very, very disappointed by that performance from what is, apart from Kobe Mainu maybe, but
who didn't start?
Yeah, the strongest lineup.
Is it?
And you can't beat.
Ericsson was. Oh, you mean like with?
Yeah. So if you add Mainu, this is apart from Mainu, this is the strongest lineup.
Højlund.
I would argue that Zirkzee is ahead of him.
Maguire.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay, so not the strongest lineup. Thank you.
Pretty much.
Luke Shaw?
No, pretty much the strongest lineup. This was pretty much the strongest lineup they had. They can't be 20, who haven't played in Europe for 10 years, who are an average team. The only team that United have beaten this season are Fulham, Southampton, and Barnsley. And that tells you their level. This is what they are. They're just bang average.
What I didn't follow in this is starting Ericsson again. I think, what is it, like 4 starts in 5 games or 3 starts in 4 games or whatever. When you know that he's out of contract next year, so presumably you're not going to re-sign him for obvious reasons. What's the thinking there?
I guess he gives you a bit more control, or he should give you more control on the ball.
Except when he gives the ball away for this. Okay, but whatever.
Which from him is very, very, very strange, because if there's one thing that you can associate with Christian Eriksen is this kind of vision and 360 vision all the time. This is what the kind of players like him do all the time. They scan everything. They see everything before everyone. And not to have seen or to think that he could have just come on inside easily like that, not realizing there was a player there. But even thinking that he could do that in that area is very strange.
Was he also maybe slightly rattled by the fact that before that happened, that guy, I think was it Salahuddin or whoever whoever it was, that guy makes that run where you assume you've got at least 3 teammates who are in a position to stop him or foul him or whatever, and then he just pops up in front.
I mean, it goes past him too. So I don't think he's rattled. It's just that I think he's not ready maybe to... But I think at his age, with his fitness, I just don't think he can play again at that top level. I really don't. I love him, and I think we all love him and everything. His career, everything you want. I just don't think he can play at that level for 90 minutes, high intensity. And that's clear. For me, that's clearly... Because in any time, he would have scanned before, he would know, he would sense it, he would feel it. The fact that he didn't showed that I think physically he was just not up for it towards the end of the game or 3/4 of the game.
All right, let's try to bring some positivity, or at least try to find a way forward in terms of results. Right? Obviously, going into this, they kept the positivity. People said that after that Liverpool game, right? Look, we're keeping clean sheets and we're not losing games, and they still haven't lost four games without a defeat in a row, right? Yeah. Which, you look at it and you're kind of like, all right, but this really means standards have really, really dropped. I think what I expect now from Ten Hag is more in terms of performance. If it is to be Ugarte Mainu, that's fine, but you also have a squad because Ugarte will pick up bookings, right? So I would expect a way back for Casemiro because he's still there. He can still help you. He is better than other people, no matter how terrible he was in that one game where you effectively scapegoated him. And while you wait for the injuries to come back, for the injured guys to come back, including Højlund, I start, we've seen him in bits. Now you need to see the version with Højlund of Manchester United. Jules, let's stick with Højlund because obviously we saw him, I think he played the last 10 minutes against Palace. And Hey, you expected him to start last night. He didn't. We were talking off air, and you said, "Well, he's not going to start against Spurs."
Yeah, I would not think so.
Obviously, bigger body. Maybe you ease him back into it. Let me just talk a bit about the implications of having Højlund versus Zirkzee, because they're both big, strong boys who come from Serie A, but they have very, very different skill sets.
Yeah, and so it depends how you want to play. If you're Erik ten Hag, but does he know how
would
he
you
wants to play?
No, let's not forget. What if Erik ten Hag calls you up on the phone? Yes, Jules, you always criticize me. What should my front three be? Front four. Like, I play Bruno, yeah? Yes?
Yeah. You have to play Bruno, Garnacho, and Rashford for me. So then it's whoever the number 9 that you want. If Zirkzee.
No, which do you want?
Personally,
tell me about games, opponent scenarios. What would you work on?
So I think for a game like this, Spurs game at the weekend, for example, but overall, I love Højlund if Højlund is fit ahead of Zirkzee. I love Zirkzee. I think he's a lovely, lovely footballer, lovely ball player. There's a chance that he makes for himself yesterday where he comes short, he plays this little 1-2 with Bruno, then the step over and then the shot with his left foot. This is what he does. He's not a clinical finisher. This is not what he does. He's not an in and out number 9, but he has so much to his game. He's got such a great asset of great vision, linking up play, technical ability is lovely, better than Højlund. And I think that counts. But I think in a team like this, with the wingers that they have, with the ball that goes wide a lot very quickly, for them to go one-on-one, I think it's maybe more important to have a presence in the box like Højlund than to have Zirkzee. And also, I think people criticize Højlund's link-up play, and it's not as bad as a lot of people make it to be. So I would work with Højlund. I certainly wouldn't have spent the money on Zirkzee in the summer. And I know Højlund has fitness issues regularly, which is a problem. But let's say that he's fully fit for the whole season. I think there's much more to come from him in a team like this. So if I was the coach of this team, I would have Højlund ahead of Zirkzee.
Yeah, I think Højlund is also much more plug and play in the sense that he is a much more traditional center forward. And as you said, it's easier for the wingers to dialogue with him. I think it's a lot easier for Bruno to dialogue with him as well. Zirkzee gives you a lot more unpredictability. Zirkzee maybe even has a higher upside than Højlund, potentially. You scratch the surface simply because of his vision and his technical ability. But it's going to take time to build chemistry with Zirkzee, because if you're a winger, you expect Zirkzee to be in one place, and he's not. You expect Zirkzee to do one move, and then boom, he gives you the ball.
Very true.
That I think the reason he stuck with Zirkzee for so long, other than Højlund being injured, but he had other options. He could have played Rashford up front if he wanted to change things around earlier in the season, is that he thinks it's important to build this chemistry. And I think particularly probably the Zirkzee-Bruno chemistry, simply because, Bruno obviously does his own thing on the pitch a lot of the time. And for him to get on the same wavelength at Zirkzee, so have that kind of multiplier effect. I do think in the shorter term, once Højlund is fit, you expect Højlund to play, or I would expect Højlund to play, because the games come so thick and fast at this stage. You just don't have the time.
Yeah, true. I mean, in a very selfish way, personally, I would love to see a Højlund-Zirkzee partnership, and if that could work, it might not work. But I could find it interesting that Zirkzee has a focal point next to him, can have a bit of freedom. Obviously, there's a problem then with Bruno and where you play Bruno, but I think a Zirkzee-Højlund front two could be quite fun to watch and maybe quite fun to work with if you were United with two wide players. But yeah, I think even for Bruno, I think Højlund is a better player to have in front of him than Zirkzee. I think just for the passes and to have that guy in the box that you're going to try to find with incredible passes like Bruno can do.
You could. That's a really interesting one, but that's never going to happen as long as Bruno's there. Because
definitely not.
Even it means sacrificing your wingers. I suppose you could go 4-3-2-1 or 4-3-1-2 or whatever, but then you sacrifice your wingers, which is stupid. When
it would be a 4-4-2, but they would know. Or Bruno would have to play really, really deep then.
Which again, not really a good idea with Bruno. I want to touch upon the midfield before we get to Rashford. If we had to think base formation, big game for United, is it Kobe and and Ugarte or Kobe and Casemiro? Like, where do you think Casemiro is right now in Ten Hag's view?
I don't know. I think he's probably somewhere in the cellar, around the cellar, like, quite deep in the house, because you would have thought there might be games where you can bring him back after the Liverpool nightmare that he had and just bring him back into the team. And that hasn't really been the case. I was glad to see Ugarte starting last night. I thought he did okay. I think the 7 recoveries, it's him that breaks that attack on the goal from 20, because the guy like literally ran past everybody until Ugarte makes that tackle, and then Eriksen recovers the ball. And okay, it's not Ugarte's fault. Then Eriksen just has a brain freeze and loses it there. But this is what he does, and this is what we've already explained with him. And then not long after, towards the end, he tries a shot from the edge of the box that goes on the M6 or the M1 or whatever motorway it is. So that's not what he does. He can't do that. But he can do other things really well. So I'm glad to see it. And I think he should be quite soonish, ready for a Premier League game. I'm not sure if Spurs comes a little bit too early maybe for him, because he's going to be quite intense, and I would expect end-to-end with Spurs, Old Trafford. I don't know if you can play him in that, but you certainly can't play Eriksen in that game either, because he's going to get overrun by Maddison and by Kulusevski and by Bentancur and all those guys. So,
and bringing back Casemiro maybe not really an option.
Maybe not for that. So I would expect an Ugarte, Mainu double pivot for the Spurs game on Sunday.
Which I think is okay if you're going to be defensive and play in transition. But I guess that's kind of what we come to expect. You 4 attack and the rest of us, maybe some help from the fullbacks.
Yeah, I don't know. It'd be quite a super interesting game, I think.
Right. Where are we on the Rashford issue? Because we talked about, some people made a big deal of the fact that he was dropped. As I said on Monday, Ten Hag wasn't clear with his pre-game interview, frankly. I mean, he might have explained it, but you have to realize, and United need to realize, that you can parse stuff. And when he speaks in the present tense rather than the past tense about lifestyle, you're not helping things, right?
Yeah.
Does he? But he looks well ahead, at least to me.
He was the best player yesterday. Yeah, I thought he was a threat with the ball. I mean, that elastico nutmeg is filthy. Marcus, this is filthy. This was beautiful.
So why can't we put this among the list of good things?
This is just a Marcus Rashford positive. It's nothing to do with his coach or his team. Like I said on the FC show, on Saturday night, I didn't understand why he was dropped or why he was rested for the Crystal Palace game. It
so
didn't
he could
make
be fit
any
for
sense
Twente.
to me. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think they need him so badly. This is a team that scored 5 goals in 5 league games. 5. Their goal difference is 0. 0, Gab. I mean, last season it was 0 at the end of the season. This is where they are. There's been no improvement despite spending a ton of money in the summer. There's still no improvement from last season. They need Rashford at his best if they want to do something this season.
I think Mazraoui's had a good start to the season. We're talking about no improvement.
Yeah.
I think ideally this is a spot in the season where, you might want to rotate your fullbacks a little bit, but he can't do that because his other fullbacks are Malacia and Shaw, who are kind of
out forever. Yeah.
Yeah, Lindelof we probably don't want to be seeing either, but who's also hurt. De Ligt, I think, is a slow burn, but I think he can help. He didn't play last night. We saw Maguire. I don't think Maguire was terrible.
No.
But again, you're not building anything there because obviously he's out of contract.
Yeah.
And we're still waiting on your boy Lenny.
Yeah, there's a long way to go still for him. But I don't know. I was just think that by now you would not be 11th in the table. You would not be not able to beat Twente at Old Trafford. And they were booed, and rightly so. And for me, I don't think Ten Hag should be there. I don't think he deserves to be there. I don't think he earned the right to be there, even winning the FA Cup.
But he got his extension.
Well, yeah, he did. So let's see. I do think, though, if they lose this weekend against Spurs, then they go away to Porto in the Europa League. Then it's Aston Villa away in the league. 3 games like that. Let's see next week how many points or what those 3 results are. But I think it could be under massive, massive pressure going into the international break after that.
Yeah, and I also think the schedule, when they look ahead, what might actually, if those games go wrong, what might actually help them is that the schedule after that gets even worse for United before it gets better. And it's the old maxim where, coaches, before a tough spell, clubs like to let the coach they're going to sack stay. I don't know, but you're right. These 3 games, you need to see progress. I think Højlund is a big, let's say, alibi or mitigating factor for Ten Hag. All right, enough United. How about some quick hits instead?
Let's go, Gab.
Robert Lewandowski scores the only goal as Barcelona grind out a 1-0 win over Getafe. Jules, this was tougher, but they've won every league game this season, and it's 7 goals in 7 for Leva. So much for the haters.
Yeah, you're right. 7 in 7 for Barcelona and Hansi Flick as well. Pretty impressive, really, for a start of the season. They could have scored more, and they didn't really concede anything either. On the other hand, Iñaki Peña, for his first game, had nothing to do until the 94th minute. This is good. And Lewandowski, again, scoring. I have to be honest, I didn't think he would have a start of the season like this. So, well done to him.
I think he's helped in the sense that he's not the Lewandowski of old. And we obviously know Flick for the pressing and everything, but they're playing a lot further up the pitch. They're keeping the ball closer to him, which I think totally suits him. And I think this is impressive because this is the kind of game, coming where it does in the schedule, where Getafe go and park the bus and whatever, where you could have seen a stumble, and they did. And, Lamine Yamal was average by his standards, and yet there was no stumble, and they were never really in danger.
Yeah. Marc-André ter Stegen's injury that we mentioned before will keep him away for a long time, around 8 months, Gab. But what do you make of the fact that Wojciech Szczesny is reportedly on his way to replace him?
I think they're so excited in Turin at Juventus because obviously
they get 2 million.
I think 4 million actually is my understanding. Because obviously he retired and he got some money and then he's going to have to give it back if he goes back and plays for somebody else. Szczesny is not that old, right?
34.
I think presumably he's relatively fit, but he's a goalkeeper. I mean, come on, how unfit does he? Actually, Szczesny's case, I don't know. But no, you get the guy with experience. I thought he was a good keeper for Juve last year. And I think it's exciting for him to come back.
It's the best that they could have had, I think. He's better than Keylor Navas, better than Claudio Bravo, better than all those guys that have been mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, Bravo may be better with his feet than Szczesny. Maybe that's a thing, if that's a thing. But no, I think this is a good solution.
Yeah, it's a good solution.
Speaking of injuries, it has now been confirmed that Rodri suffered ligament damage against Arsenal on Sunday. And Pep Guardiola says it will be out for, I think this is a scientific term, quote, a long, long time.
Yeah.
Jules, does this move the needle in terms of title favorites away from City and towards Arsenal?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, when you look at the games that he doesn't play and that City loses when he's not there, obviously, I think he's the best player in his position in the world. So when you don't have him, it's a huge blow for your team. You can have Kovacic replacing him. You can have a John Stones stepping up again in that kind of midfield role.
Mateus Nunes has volunteered to be the replacement for Rodri.
Yeah, and Pep mentioned him, but I mean, it's not.
It's a different skill set.
Yeah, completely. I was a bit. I thought that one was.
He just wants to get into the team. Yeah, he play goal if he wants.
Exactly, he play anywhere. Be a physio, Mateus, if you want to. But yeah, one is sad for Rodri and for City and for all the football lovers because he's such a great player. And for City, I think it's massive. I think
the people who are linking this to the fact that he's played a bazillion games. Now, I'm not a doctor. But you have a medical background.
Yeah.
Is there something to it?
Yeah, I think so.
With that kind of injury?
Yeah.
And it's not just because the more minutes you play, the more likely you are to...
No, I think there is. I think we've seen him in the women's game, for example, too, to a different level. But we've seen a lot of this season with ACL injuries.
But the women aren't overloaded the way the men are. They don't play anywhere near as many games. So.
No, not as many games, obviously.
No, what I'm saying is this linked to him playing so many games?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
This type of injury?
Yeah, okay. I think so. I think there's a bigger risk.
You're the doctor here.
But I just think it's an absolute massive blow for them. Starting with the game against Newcastle at the weekend, where you really would want him in your team. Guardiola, staying with City, rotated his Manchester City team in a 2-1 victory over Watford in the League Cup on Wednesday night, but also warned fans that he's going to pick reserves in the next round.
Yeah, he said, we're not going to waste energy, for sure. I'll play the second team.
Who did they play in the next round?
I have no idea. I could care less. It's the League Cup. Again, they don't take it seriously. I don't take it seriously. This is why on this show... Enough. Like, you're not hearing us talk about, I believe Chelsea played against Barrow or somebody. Liverpool played somebody. I don't care.
Is there like a City Tottenham in the next round? That's pretty cool. I think there's Liverpool Brighton.
It'll be cool. Look, I think these games become relevant later in the competition when people play the real teams. But yeah, as if if it's a big game and the clubs take it seriously, but you look at the lineup and you say, no, look, we're playing the second 11. They become interesting to see players in the second 11 for me.
Yeah.
And that's it. Jules, we're not done because we have more quick hits.
Yes.
Real Madrid coast to a 3-0 lead over Alaves, but then concede twice in the final minutes and have to settle for a 3-2 victory. Jules, reason for concern?
I don't think so, really, because they were so much in control of that game for most of it, really. Even if at the end, Alaves have more shots than Real Madrid. I mean, at the Bernabeu, which is okay, but no, I don't think so. The balance question will come back onto the table, but then they don't have Kylian for the next 3 games, so
we'll get to that.
But then Carlo can go back to maybe have a more balanced team.
But I thought they looked fine. I mean, he was on the pitch for 80 minutes. I thought the balance thing. Now, it's easier to be balanced, I guess, when you play against a team that parked the bus, which is what I thought Alaves did until the end when they all streamed forward. But I thought this was actually a solid performance.
Yeah, it was okay.
You still have, and also they improved their statistical quirk. Until this game, I think they'd only scored 1 goal in the first half of games. Yeah. And now they've tripled the total to 3.
Lucas Vazquez scored after 55 seconds. So, here we go in terms of scoring early. And my boy Kylian Mbappe, as we just said, came off injured, and ESPN sources are reporting and telling us that he will be out for 3 weeks. He will come back only after the international break that he will obviously miss for France. So that means not there for the derby against Atletico Madrid at the weekend.
Yeah, and by the way, it's funny with this reporting because I saw a report from a mainstream outlet today saying he was a doubt for the Atletico Madrid game. And then we have our ESPN sources reporting. In this case, I know who I trust a little bit more.
Yeah, definitely.
I'll be interested to see how he deals with this because there is a strong case to be made that if you really believe that you can carry this sort of Bellingham, Vinicius, Rodrigo, Kylian, if this is going to be your base formation, at least in big games, there's a strong case to be made that you keep it. You play Rodrigo at center forward and you play Endrick or Arda, Güler, or whatever on the other side. That said, or maybe even you keep Rodrigo on the right, which is where he would play if Mbappe were there, and then you just plug Endrick in for Mbappe. I don't think you're going to do that. I think it's too important against Atletico. I think you need to make a statement. Barcelona are 4 points ahead now, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. You don't want to lose touch with that.
No, and then he's not going to be there for the Lille game in the Champions League, which would have obviously been against his own brother, which I think...
Against Lille, right?
Against Lille, yeah. Which I think the family was really, really looking forward to. So it's a bit of a shame. And then there's Villarreal as well, just before international break, who got spanked by Barcelona, but who before that had a really good start of the season. So those 3 games are not going to be easy without him. I mean, for Real Madrid.
Is Ethan getting significant minutes at Lille?
He got injured, so he just come back from injury. He's only 17 at time. But it's just funny that the draw made those 2, faced against each other, Lille and Real Madrid, and that this one in France as well, I think would have been very special for the Mbappe family. So I wouldn't be surprised if Kylian travels with Real Madrid and be there and see, his brother and stuff. But it would have been even better to see them on the pitch.
As long as he doesn't cheer when his brother scores, I'm okay with that.
I'm not even sure if his brother would have played, but still, he would have been in the squad and they would have, kind of faced each other.
Sticking with Real Madrid, Marca report that Vinicius Jr. has already been informed that he won the Ballon d'Ors. Jules, you know my thoughts on this, so it's all you.
I don't know. I don't think all the votes are in yet anyway. So I'm not sure if Marca are right.
They count the votes. It's very scientific. Sorry, go ahead.
What do you mean count the votes for? Well, yeah, people vote, then they count the votes, obviously.
Right.
For
by hand.
Yeah, they can't. Right, okay, let's just...
Sorry. Are you okay with Vini?
It's okay.
No, are you okay with Vini?
It's okay. I don't, yeah, Vini is good.
But we were going to go for Rodri.
Yeah, but Vini is good. Like, I've got no problem with Vini winning. And sorry to bring bad news, but Juventus of Milan has been stripped of the 2027 Champions League final.
Yeah, not super surprised when obviously you have Champions League finals. You have all sorts of requirements in terms of stadiums and what happens around them. They're in a situation right now where there's uncertainty if they're going to build another stadium next door, if the teams are going to move, when they're going to move, whatever. I can see why UEFA, that have to start selling sponsorship deals and packages, might say, guys, I'm also not sure this necessarily bothers the clubs because, hey, look, it's another kick up the backside. the Italian FA saying, well, then we have the Stadio Olimpico in Rome that's available. That could be upgraded to 5-star stadium quickly. And I'm like, I'm not sure it should work that way. I'm not sure. It's not like they award it to a country. They award it to a city.
Yeah.
I think they should go out to tender, but I think for political reasons, I wouldn't be surprised if Rome got it in the end. Heung-min Son's contract with Tottenham expires at the end of the season, though the club do have a 1-year club option to extend. He says nobody's been in touch. Should this be a concern, Jules?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like you often say, there's no need before November or December maybe to sit all together and discuss this. I think I would be surprised if the club doesn't trigger that extension, just the 1 year, at least to protect a little bit of his value if he decided to go, for example, or if he said, listen, I've had 10 great years here, but now I want something different. Just towards, he's 31 years old, isn't he now?
I think 32 now.
32 even, yeah. So
he's productive.
yeah, still productive. Would you keep? I mean, it's the same as the Salah and Van Dijk situation in the sense that you probably keep him, but maybe not with the same wages that he has now. So
I would trigger the option. I mean, I would say,
Yeah, sure.
hey, Sonny, because also you have to go with the player's personality. Are you somehow going to be offended if we don't give you a contract until you're 36 or 37 and we wait and see where we are? You wait and see where you are. Maybe, if we trigger the option at 34, you're a free agent, you can go somewhere else. Are you okay with that? Do you want us to sit down? I would evaluate it that way. We also know that notoriously Spurs are, shall we say, conservative in their approach with money. So, I'm all right, but I don't think he's fussed. I don't think he should be fussed.
The Times report that the Premier League legal fees have now passed the £50 million mark, and the Telegraph saying that the clubs are worried about this.
So, my thoughts on lawyers?
Oh, man. It's a lot of money, that.
It's not all about the Manchester City case, but it's undoubtedly the most complicated case that they're facing, which I guess why the legal fees are so high. I have a bit of an issue with the clubs complaining, or I think the implication is the clubs are unhappy that, they're spending so much money on lawyers because they're going to have to foot their share of the bill.
Yeah.
Even if it passes 50 million. And by the way, this is not going to be all on the Man City case.
Yeah.
It's $2.5 million per club, and City, if found guilty, will be paying a fine.
Yeah.
And a lot of those legal fees will be offset. So I don't know. Do you want a framework of rules that people have to follow that you voted on, or do you not? If you want it, lawyers unfortunately are a necessary evil.
Yeah, that's true.
Manchester United's new 100,000 capacity stadium, if it gets built, and the club have said they're going to, consult with fans and decide whether to renovate Old Trafford or build one, will not get government funding, Jules. Andy Burnham, the mayor of Manchester, made that very clear. And yet the club paid for a study that says it will generate tens of thousands of jobs and billions for the local economy.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I never really know how this government funding or, public funding comes around, who decides what for, because they fear that if you give money to United, then maybe City will ask for also some money.
I don't think it's necessarily giving the money to United in this case, because I think that was always a non-starter in the current climate. I think it's more that if they build a stadium, United will need to get a lot of help in terms of public infrastructure and permitting and redeveloping areas around that. And that costs money, and that's obviously good for the city. And the government has to decide to what degree are we going to pitch in on that? Yeah. Is there a value for the taxpayers who don't care about United? What I find interesting, though, is studies that are commissioned by clubs always show massive benefit to everyone.
Everybody. But the photos that they put out of Old Trafford refurbished, which is the one that we all saw, it looks really cool. It looks really, really cool. The story broke while we were recording on Monday, Gab, but it appears that the Friedkin Group are now in the process of acquiring Everton Football Club, though it could take up to 12 weeks. And there's already talks that maybe Mauricio Sarri or Gareth Southgate could come and replace Sean Dyche. Yeah, so a couple of things here. It's going to take 12 weeks, not because there's doubt of founding, but because there's a regulatory process, and I think it's going to be 8 to 12 weeks, and has to get approved. Also, remember, the Friedkins were already on the hook for $200 million that they had loaned to Everton, which I think is something that some people have forgotten. As for Dyche, I think you need to see where you are. If you want to stay up, then Mr. Gravel Voice, I think, is a better bet, mid-season to stay up. If this is where, than Southgate or Sarri. I think those are two names of unemployed managers who have big reps, and inevitably they get linked. But it would be unfair to Sean Dyche, I think.
Rafael Varane has retired after his latest injury with Como. Jules, let's put him in context.
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously completely biased because he's one of my friends, but I think one of the greatest defenders of his generation. Certainly one of the greatest in French football history too. Not just with the CV and winning World Cups and Champions League, La Liga titles, even the Nations League if you want. I think by the way he played, his elegance, his intelligence, the way he was, I think, as a player representing your club, whatever club that is. I think he was such a great guy to have around in your dressing room. He was very unlucky with injuries. I think there's a lot of games that he even played injured because he loved the game so much and loved his teams and his teammates and his clubs. So he didn't want to miss out on even more games because I think he could have been even better and stronger. But I've got so much love and respect for him.
What I find remarkable about him, and I remember doing something kind of on this, looking at the actual numbers. When he broke in, after he moved to Real Madrid and he sort of established himself very quickly as a starter, he was still very young. I think he was 21, 22 years old. At that time, now it's changed a little bit since then. We've seen Josko Gvardiol, we've seen Bastoni, we've seen others. But at the time, really big elite clubs, they just didn't play.
Yeah.
Center backs at that age. He was one of the very, very few. And I think it spoke to people, looked at him and they said, he's a freak athlete, first and foremost. And he's so smart and he's such a good teammate. And it didn't matter that, oh, look, he's not, Franz Beckenbauer on the wall. We need to stop making these Franz Beckenbauer references. He's aging us. Okay, he's not Matthijs de Ligt on the ball. But he brings these other things to the table and a tremendous professional.
Yeah. Australia have your new head coach, Gabby, and it's Tony Popovic.
Yeah, I'll let you discuss the implications of Tony Popovic. I'm interested in the fact that he's not the Australia team coach. He's the Subway Socceroos head coach. Now, we've seen this happen with Jesse Marsh as well, where he is the MLS Canada national men's team coach or whatever he is. I guess it's a way of you get a sponsor to pay him, but guess what? This is the last time ever. I'm going to say it one more time. This is the last time ever I'm going to say Subway Socceroos in conjunction with Tony Popovic. I will only call him Pop from now on. Tony
Subway,
Pop.
as in the sandwiches?
I would assume so.
Okay.
Unless it's the underground
Do you
system.
think in his contract there's he's got like a free Subway?
No, and honestly,
Subway
I invite. This
as
is
many
such,
sandwiches as he wants.
Look, this is such nonsense, right? I can deal with stadium naming rights. I grudgingly refer to the Emirates as opposed to the Arsenal Stadium at Ashburton Grove, which is what I called it pig-headedly for a long time. But this is just dumb. This is just dumb.
Dumb from who? From Subway or from the Australian FA?
I think it's a waste of money from Subway. If I were a Subway shareholder.
Yeah, but if they do it because they think that there's value to it.
Yeah, but these are marketing people. They always make up their stupid KPIs to go and justify them. It's a bunch of jollies. Rudi Feller, sporting director of the German FA, says that if Julian Nagelsmann were to step down, of course, they would turn to Jurgen Klopp. No brainer?
No. I mean, he said he would take a 1-year sabbatical, so that would take him to summer 2025. So he would have to wait another year, potentially, if Nagelsmann goes to the World Cup 2026 and then steps down to go back to club level, which is, I think, what we all expect him to do. So maybe clubs say, 2 years of going to the Maldives and to Hawaii and Tahiti.
You'll get bored with that, won't he?
Really, do you think?
I don't know. I think
this is a great path for him to go to then take over Germany side.
I think what it does underscore, I think there is a concern, because, Nagelsmann wasn't super hot to trot for the German national team. I think there is a thought in their mind in saying, all right, this guy, he's very sure of himself. He's very cocky. He's still very young. There might be a scenario, 2025, who knows? Real Madrid call, Manchester United call. And they put a bunch of money on there and the opportunity to do this and that. Maybe City post-Pep. And he might say, hey, look, I'll leave it in the hands of Uncle Jurgen, and I'm out of here.
Yeah, right? That could be. You're right. That could
but
be.
It's nice to have Jurgen Klopp in reserve,
it's pretty good.
Potentially.
Pretty good. Relevo in Spain reports that UEFA said it was a mistake not to award a penalty for Marco Cucurellá's handball with Spain against Germany at the Euros in the quarterfinals. Gab, what do you make of this?
So I've been trying to follow up on this. So it's not UEFA making an official announcement, from what I can understand. Yeah. I think what's happened is obviously you've got the referees and referees education people. at some point where I would have thought a lot of the stuff would be confidential, and at some point in one of their things where they review decisions, they said this should have been, this should have been a penalty.
Yeah.
Which is, but then I would assume those things probably should be confidential. So it somehow leaked out of that. Again, at the time, I think we both said that it should be a penalty.
The whole world
100%.
said. I think the whole world.
No, not the whole world. I'm sure Marco Correa feels differently.
Yeah. And the referee.
Look, I'm glad that they acknowledge it. And if it can be used for referee education, it goes forward. Otherwise, send all your complaints to Mr. A. Taylor and Mr. Who was the... Was it Mr. S. Atwell? I think it was.
Who's
Stewie? If it wasn't you in the VAR, with somebody else, then don't.
Who's the head of the UEFA referee? So Colina is FIFA, right? Yeah. And UEFA is your friend Italian as well.
Roberto Rossetti. Yeah,
Rossetti. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm just putting that on there.
What do you want?
No, I'm kidding.
Actually, I do wonder about that. Right?
But
when these guys like sit in this, when Colina Rossetti sit in the, or even Howard Webb.
Yeah.
Right? When they're in the stands
mad, no?
and they see a crappy decision on the pitch, are they tempted to just run on the pitch? Just get their phone and says like, patch me into this moron's headset.
Imagine on the WhatsApp group, they send you.
I know. Jules, we love our Victor Osimhen. He didn't score, but he was devastating for Galatasaray again in the 3-1 win over PAOK in the Europa League. And your boy Mauro Icardi comes off and scores the third goal as well.
So now that Maurito is back fit, let's see what happens if they play together. What do you do with Icardi, who's the club captain, who got the armband when he came on?
They can play together, no problem. Osimhen can do whatever he wants.
That would be fun. But Osimhen should have scored really. He was so involved, as you said, Gabby. He had plenty of chances. He created goals. He created chances. He looks super fit, super good. It's just in that goal, that one goal, and after that, many will follow.
And super motivated as well.
Yeah, he looks. I mean, he had a chance after 20 seconds. So,
is there a scenario where maybe January rolls around, maybe Lukaku gets hurt, maybe De Laurentiis gets on the phone and says, "Hey, Victor, do you want to come back?"
Imagine. Oh, that would be lovely. Lazio, meanwhile, rose to a 3-0 win over Dynamo Kiev as Bouladia scored twice. Gab, can they actually do something this season?
I think they can, actually. I think this team is coming together well. I mean, I think Marco Baroni, a lot of people turned up their nose when he was appointed, but he did such a good job at his previous clubs. And Bouladia, I don't know, he's not going to start every game for Lazio because obviously Tati Castellanos and us, but I mean, I think he's really underrated scorer.
Yeah.
It's time. It's Texter time. Albeit indirectly.
Yeah.
But according to a report by UOL in Brazil, Lucas Paqueta's uncle and cousin sent cash to Luis Enrique, who now plays for Textor's Botafogo, back when he was a Betis player. Now, both Paqueta and Luis Enrique, as you know, they're accused of spot fixing, getting intentionally booked for betting purposes. In fact, Lucas Paqueta is the subject of a long-running investigation here in England, which could result, if found guilty, could result in a serious suspension. What's your take on this? I mean,
it's just a little bit.
We know
weird,
it happened, right? We know that they got the money, right?
Yeah.
But they say it was because they had borrowed money from Luis Enrique and were simply paying him back?
I know. I think there's a lot of weird things in this story. It's very murky too. I just think he has dragged on that for quite a long time. And in like all those cases, I don't know if they're innocent or not, Luis Enrique and Paqueta and their cousins, their uncles, their sisters, their mothers. I don't know. But I think there's a point where we need an answer. We need the end of the investigation. People to say, okay, this is what happened. This is what not happened. This is what the players did or didn't do. But we need something, because I think even for Paqueta, it's for both of those players, it can't be nice mentally to play knowing that this is all going round above you, with you. That at any time, really, the something will happen that could potentially, finish your career.
Yeah, and I'll say this too. I mean, Luis Enrique probably was on a decent wage. Well, is on a decent wage now, and at Betis he would have been on an even bigger wage, right? Apparently, we're talking about something like $5,000. That it sounds more plausible that these guys borrowed $5,000 from him and then we're paying him back. To me, that sounds more plausible than Luis Enrique saying like, "Oh, I need more money. I know. I'm going to jeopardize my career for $5,000.
To
Right?
get a yellow card, yeah.
Like that doesn't seem super plausible. The fact that they're related to Paqueta and sending money to players, not a good idea. But again, he's being investigated because a lot of the bets come from
The
Paqueta Island,
yeah,
which is not Luis Paqueta's private island. It's simply where he's from. His last name is not actually Paqueta, but they just call him Luis Paqueta because that's where he's from.
Yeah, exactly.
You could have been Julian Paris.
Yeah, I would have loved that. But there was obviously loads of betting on him getting a yellow card from the Paqueta Island in those games.
Exactly.
Which again is a bit strange.
Not a good look.
No. Real Sociedad are held, Europe's big five leagues are working on a deal together, Gabby, to close the transfer window before the start of the season. You always said you're a big advocate of that.
Actually, back in the day, I was against it. Way, way back in the day when it was first suggested but that was back when, because you had the Champions League third qualifying rounds and for certain teams were making. But I've come around. This is stupid. It's stupid to see what we see. I don't need to see football clubs playing, and which is the reality for a lot of clubs outside the very rich ones, where they don't know what players they have and the players all change and everything. I've come around to the fact it's a common sense idea. They would have done it last summer. They couldn't get La Liga on board, and they couldn't get La Liga on board with it because of Barcelona. And I am not blaming Barcelona right now. They were in an extreme situation after all the Barto debt and after the Laporta leavers. So they said, no, we need to wait until the very, very end because we need to be able to register players, which is fair enough. I think what it would mean is, of course, you could still move players out. And you would. And we saw it this year, players going to Turkey and Saudi Arabia after the window closed. But the implication is that there's no club outside the Big Five that really has money to get top players from the Big Five leagues. So they would be okay with essentially shutting the door. I would expect this would happen, but again, Barcelona, and not just them, but other clubs could say, wait, we can't help it. I don't know if there's a workaround for them or whatever. Real Sociedad are held to a 1-1 draw away to Nice in the Europa League. Jules, it's not quite working for La Real yet this season.
No, and for Imanol, the club is saying that he's not under pressure, but it's true that they haven't started the season well. They were really lucky to get a draw there in Nice because Nice were outstanding. Arthur from start to finish missed a penalty that Ramiro saved on Guesson, but really they were second best again, So I for a team that was so good last season, that played such a nice brand of football, this season it's just not going their way. We saw against Real Madrid, for example, where they were outstanding for an hour, hit the crossbar 3 times or the woodwork 3 times, and then ended up losing the game. So it's not all bad. It's just not happening for them. And usually when you're in that kind of negative spiral, it's tricky to get out of it.
Tell you what, this is still not a team I want to play against.
Yeah,
kind of, just below the very top tier.
Yeah. Hamad Al-Balawi, who will be in charge of organizing the 2034 World Cup in Saudi Arabia if they are approved as host, says that all fans will be welcome, Gab, and privacy will be respected.
Yeah, we say if. I think most people have it a foregone conclusion. December 11th is the day. So he was asked a question specifically by Sky related to members of the LGBTQ community in Saudi. This was an issue in Qatar. It'll continue being an issue there. There's a lot of elements to this about local custom, foreign custom. This argument, this don't ask, don't tell, which is what they did in Qatar. I think it's a much broader situation because the population of Saudi Arabia, I think, is north of 40 million. I think roughly 20 million of those are actually native Saudis. Among those people, guess what? They are LGBTQ people who are Saudi, who live there. It's not just about the visitors and saying, well, do whatever you want in the privacy of your room, but don't do it which already is, you could make that argument. The question is it going to be inclusive for everybody, including actually the Saudis who might be members of these communities? Is this something that FIFA should really push further for? Is this part of FIFA's job? Do we consider this a human right? And to what degree do the stakeholders consider it a human right? All I'm going to say is things change very quickly in the world, and this isn't going to be for another 10 years, and who knows what the situation is going to be like. But I think certainly if you're a member of that community, especially if you're local, right? Or because I always think of it in terms of the people who choose to go, right? Here's who doesn't choose to go: coaches, players, staff members. I mean, in practice, they don't choose to go. And there will be members of the LGBTQ community among them, right? We already know this. but it's also all the locals. And I think the people who don't have a choice, I think those are the ones that you can look after, that you need to look after. And I said, things can change.
Yeah.
Sergio Rico has a new club, 18 months after his horrific accident with a horse.
Yeah.
Jules, it's great to see him back.
Amazing. Really so happy for him. I think everybody is within the football world, because we thought at some point that he might not survive anyway, that freaky accident, horse riding. So well done to him. He's going to go to Algarve. It's a new chapter in his career. I mean, he's more towards the end anyway. That hopefully he can enjoy with his family, make decent money, and then just feel like a football player again, because that's obviously not what he has felt like in the last 18 months. So I'm so happy for him. More free agent additions as well, Gabi. Miralem Pjanic, who was Al Jasha in the UAE, has joined CSKA Moscow. That's a strange move.
Yeah, I would have thought you already cashed in on the big paychecks, Miralem, when you went to Al Sharjah. Because look, the reality about CSKA Moscow is you don't play European football as long as the sanctions are there. You're pretty much off the radar. I don't know that we're going to mention him again. He's 34. Maybe he's thinking one last paycheck. I wonder how big the paycheck could actually be in Russia, because again, without Russian teams work in reality as well. Without European football, the league is what it is. There isn't that much money. It's not like people are sitting there, ooh, let's get, it's not like he's Cristiano Ronaldo, right? I would have liked it for him to show that, he can still play. I would have liked him to show that in Europe. Instead, I think he's going to be remembered, sadly, as the guy who's always mentioned when they talk about inflated transfer swaps and plusvalenza, and because of the Pjanic Artur deals. Yeah. Jules, this may surprise you, but I'm not really a futsal guy.
Yeah?
So tell me about the scandal at the World Cup, France, Iran.
Yeah, so it is the Futsal World Cup, if you are interested. It's pretty good, really, really good, really spectacular. And France played Iran in the last game of the group stage to qualify for the last 16, I think it is. And France lost that game. Iran are a really good team, futsal. But France played, lost 4-1. And a lot of other teams qualified in this competition, let's say, had an issue with the attitude of the French players. It didn't look like they really wanted to win that game. More likely, they wanted to lose that game. And they lost 4-1.
But they still qualified.
They still qualified. Yeah. They were qualified already. Except that losing that game meant that they are now in the easiest side of the draw, if you want.
They're being strategic.
Yeah. And that they, for example, play, I can't remember who they play now, but it's not a team as strong as they would have been had they beat Iran and qualified top of their group. So a lot of countries are not happy with the fact that it looks like the French just threw that game, very happy to lose it, because it meant that finishing second was, so they thought, a better path in this World Cup.
Do we have an ethical problem with it? Because I would have thought,
bit. I thought you should play every game to win it. Whether it's a World Cup, whether it's a Sunday League football, and not starting doing stuff like that.
But I think they play Thailand next, which is easier. But you could also make the argument. I mean, we see this in the Champions League all the time. Manchester City have qualified, and so they send out, Taylor, Harwood, Bellis.
True, but they still don't play to lose, which was clearly what the French did.
Okay, but it's not like they played three goalkeepers out there.
No, true. But it seemed like they were not very aggressive, if you see what I mean.
I think it's very hard.
Here you go. Go and score. Here you go.
But if you do that, you're not going to lose 4-1, though, right?
Yeah,
you would make it closer if you really were throwing. I don't know.
And if you just decided you didn't want to get injured or anything like that, so you didn't play.
So you play your reserves.
Yeah, or I think it was close to the strongest team, but just I think the players, were maybe a bit super cautious. I don't know.
If they were, okay, here's a tip. If you're ever going to do this, don't lose 4-1. Make it close, right?
Yeah. You're right.
If you really want to do this, all right.
Blick in Switzerland, Gab, report that Egypt could be excluded from the 2026 World Cup. What is this all about?
Yeah, so basically when clubs or national teams organize friendlies, they have to use these people called FIFA match agents who are licensed by FIFA, and they kind of bring the two clubs or the two nations together, and they have a hand in the organizing, the logistics, and stuff like that. And apparently, they used a Swiss company for some friendlies. The Swiss company claimed that they were never paid, so they've lodged complaints with FIFA. FIFA have said, FIFA, you have to, since they are licensed by FIFA match agents, FIFA looks after them. Says FIFA, you have to pay these guys. You have to pay these guys. A bunch of deadlines have passed. Now the next step is legal action. theoretically, if they never pay, it could end up with Egypt being excluded from the 2026 World Cup. Now,
They don't have the money, or what's the reason?
I think they have cash flow issues.
Right.
The Egyptian economy is not doing great right now, and there's a bunch of things going on. Now, I don't want to think about FIFA, about Egypt not being at the 2026 World Cup. I don't think this bill, it's not in the millions. It's
Yeah, I can
probably in the
imagine.
hundreds of thousands. Maybe Mo Salah can run a GoFundMe or something, but Egypt
Or
belongs to the
just give
2026 World Cup.
give a third, or
Give 2 days' salary
a fourth of his wage
to be at the World Cup.
Yeah.
Jose Mourinho explained why he skipped the press conference after his Fenerbahce side were beaten at home by Galatasaray 3-1. And shockingly, it's the fault of Galatasaray coach Okan Buruk.
Oh, of course. Prime Mourinho on this, Gab, saying that basically it's always the away team, away manager that goes first, so they can then leave the stadium, and especially when they've traveled far, which is not the case, by the way, of Galatasaray and Fenerbahce. But anyway, and Mou said that the press conference was so long from Okan Buruk that he had to wait and wait and wait. And he said, like, I'm not waiting 80 minutes, 75 minutes for a press conference. That's ridiculous. So had nothing to do, obviously, with the result or the fact that he was upset or the trolling from Galatasaray. He just said, like, I'd had enough waiting.
He also said, I've never avoided a press conference in my 24-year career.
Which is not true.
Which is not true. I have never been afraid of journalists and their questions, which, dude, it was last year at Roma where you did an entire press conference in Portuguese on purpose. Okay? When you knew there wasn't a translator there, right? Come on, man. Whatever. It's mind games. It's part of the scenario.
It does. Exactly. Newcastle have contributed £15,000 to a crowdfunder to help repair the sinkhole at Wimbledon Stadium that caused their League Cup game on Monday night to be called off. Gab, that's lovely, isn't it?
It's a nice gesture. I know people are going to say, oh, 15,000. Well, but, PIF and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you know what? At least they helped out.
Yeah.
The sinkhole, by the way, if you see these pictures.
It looks like a golf bunker.
Yeah. But,
I don't know how it can happen even.
Exactly. I am not an expert on stadiums and pitches, but as I understand it, AFC Wimbledon Stadium is relatively new. I mean, I think it's got to be in the last couple of years that it was built, right? Presumably has some drainage
You would
issues.
think so,
and, this is a country where it actually rains a lot. So to get that big giant thing, I would hope they're covered by some kind of insurance or something, because, again, I don't want to cast aspersions, but could have been a total freak accident. But maybe somebody there.
The pictures are incredible.
Sign off on things.
The pictures are incredible, really are.
Can you imagine Dan Byrne falling into the hole? Like,
got swallowed by the hole.
Exactly.